Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're tackling a phrase you hear constantly in the news, in politics, and in economics: full employment. Now, logically, you might think you know exactly what those two words mean, but I'm going to let you in on a little secret. The actual economic reality is completely different than what most of us assume. I mean, let's just speak directly to your common sense for a second. If your phone battery is full, it's at 100%, right? So naturally, you'd assume an economy at full employment means literally every single person has a job. Unemployment is at an absolute zero. It makes perfect sense to think that. But as we dig into the actual textbook definitions today, you'll see that totally logical assumption, it's actually a massive economic myth. Let's look at the literal textbook definition, because it changes the whole game. Full employment is the situation when all those persons who are willing to work at the prevailing wage rate are getting work and are in fact employed. Notice the key words there: willing to work. It does not mean absolutely everyone in the population has a job. It specifically targets those who actually want to work at current market wages. Basically, if you just don't want to work, you aren't counted against the full employment goal at all. And that right there brings us to what we can call the 0% myth. Because the definition specifically says you have to be willing to work, it completely excludes the voluntarily unemployed. The source text actually uses a pretty blunt, surprising example for this: the idle rich. Think about folks who simply choose not to work because they literally don't have to, or maybe people who just aren't interested in a job for personal reasons. Whatever their motivation, they are not looking for work at the prevailing wage. Because they're jobless entirely by choice, economists just completely ignore them when measuring full employment. So, aiming for a 0% unemployment rate, that's an absolute fantasy. Here is the wild part. Experience actually shows that a perfectly healthy, thriving economy operating at peak full employment is always going to have about 3 to 4% of its labor force unemployed at any given time. Wait a second. How does that work? How can we possibly be at full employment if up to 4% of people are currently out of a job? Well, economists call this frictional unemployment, and it is totally normal. It's essentially the natural, unavoidable churn of a healthy job market. Think about upgrading technology that might temporarily displace certain roles, or just people deciding to quit one position so they can go find a better one. There are always structural changes happening in the broader economy, or temporary dips in demand for specific industries. It literally just takes time for people affected by these shifts to transition, to interview, and to land a new gig. So if 3 to 4% of the workforce is just temporarily caught in this transition phase, the economy is absolutely still considered fully employed. Frictional unemployment is completely consistent with a thriving economy. Okay, so let's recap. If we take the voluntarily unemployed completely off the table, and we accept that this frictional churn is just a normal thing, what exactly is left? This is where we have to draw a hard line between voluntary and involuntary unemployment. Voluntary, as we saw, is being jobless by choice. But involuntary unemployment? That describes able-bodied people who have the ability to work, who actively want to work at the prevailing wage, but are completely unable to find a job. They are out of work out of compulsion, not choice. And honestly, that brings us to the core reality of our economic system. The real problem is involuntary unemployment. When policymakers or central bankers are sweating over fighting unemployment, this is their exact target. They're not trying to force the idle rich into the office, and they aren't trying to stop people from naturally transitioning between careers. The actual devastating economic problem is when willing, capable people are actively searching for work and just hitting a brick wall. That gap, when the number of unemployed pushes past that natural 3 to 4% frictional rate, that is the giant red flashing light telling us full employment is gone. Which leaves us with this final, critical question for you to ponder. Are we actually fighting the right kind of unemployment? Honestly, now that you know these precise textbook definitions, you are never really going to look at a monthly jobs report the exact same way again. Next time a headline screams about the unemployment rate, you'll know to stop and ask, hey, is this just natural frictional churn? Are we factoring out the voluntarily jobless? Or are we facing a true, painful spike in involuntary unemployment? Knowing the difference isn't just economics trivia, it's literally the key to understanding the true health of our economy.